And this session will be moderated by a career diplomat. Thank you.
Messages is that our leaders, I think our prime minister reflect well the feeling and the thinking of all ASEAN leaders. I think also for the Indian leaders that they have the political will to move ASEAN-Indian relationship forward to a higher level. That is loud and clear. And this morning, the Thai people can hear that through their news and just last night on TV. The second point we heard was that there's a growing volume of trade, investment, tourists between ASEAN and India. That was demonstrated by the various speakers. The key driving factors are closer integration and connectivity. And to me anyway, you know, I thought the new actors and new kids on the block is the SME and the startup. Today, we will focus on the ASEAN-Indian connectivity. It's a strategy for unleashing the potential boost, whatever it is. Our panelists will tell you about it for the two regions. Let me, as the MC has briefly introduced, let me take you back a little bit, a few years back, and talk about the background of connectivity. It's not just an empty word, not just a loose word. It's not just a gimmick. It's a word that entails a lot of hard work by all ASEAN leaders, ASEAN colleagues, be it public officials and private sectors. And the word connectivity came around by about 2010 when ASEAN leaders want to have a master plan on ASEAN connectivity. And then a year later, the leaders make a declaration on East Asia Plus connectivity. And in 2013 in Bangkok, we have a high-level symposium on ASEAN-India connectivity. The topic is the toward realization of ASEAN Connectivity Plus, moving forward with ASEAN-Indian connectivity. And you have the tool. ASEAN and India have a task force to push forward the ASEAN-India connectivity. That's a little background. And when we talk about connectivity, I want to narrow your expectation. I want to narrow the scope to what we mean by ASEAN connectivity. ASEAN-India connectivity just piggyback on ASEAN connectivity naturally because we have to be the center stage. Otherwise, you cannot link to other people. So when you talk about ASEAN connectivity, we only mean three things: physical, institutional, people to people. Physical, we mean only road connection, rail connection, aviation connection, maritime connection, ICT connection, and this one we heard a lot about digital, and energy connection. That's all. We're not talking about anything else in terms of physical pillar. Institutional, you can, I hope my colleague from Ministry of Commerce will not dispute with me, it's all about, we just lift a lot of elements from AEC. Because if you have good physical connection, but you don't have software to support, make it easier, make it timeless, make it seamless, then it's not good connectivity. So a lot of elements from institutional coming from the AEC. And then if you have a good road connection, rail connection, you can take 1 minute to cross a border. And if our people do not appreciate each other, do not know each other, then it's no use. So the third pillar is a people to people. So now you will see that in ASEAN, the schools and university, there's ASEAN curriculums that get our ASEAN citizens to know more about each other. And based on this, we decide that we should not be just the island of ourselves. We have to expand to India, to link to Japan, to Korea, to China, to all our beyond ASEAN. And that's ASEAN, the India connectivity come into being. Having said that, this morning, I don't know, I hope our panelists very experienced and the moderator said already qualified. I hope they could expand the dimension further. But within the framework of ASEAN connectivity, ASEAN Indian framework connectivity, we have Mr. Brin, who is the financial expert, also governor of the SET, Stock Exchange of Thailand. So you ask him about anything. You can ask him beyond, I think, ASEAN Indian connectivity, the price of stock market today, blah, 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 whatever. The Mr. Chutinthorn, ambassador, my dear colleague, just been posted to India recently. A veteran diplomat since his father time. And he will share with us the perspective from the diplomat side. And then connectivity is empty if we don't have a business dealing together. So we have the president of Reliance Industry, Mr. Udeshi, to be with us this morning. And then as this day, we heard the presentation that I think from my good friend Arjun from ADB, that ASEAN also have linked to many sub-regional groupings. But this morning, Mr. Duta will share with us how we could take a best practice from the Mekong Institute and see how we could apply that to ASEAN India and other BIMSTEC and other sub-regional grouping in South Asia. And then typical, ladies first, but gentlemen always before. So we have Mr. Shanti. Yesterday she didn't finish, as you remember. She didn't finish her presentation. Her presentation was disrupted by the technical glitch on the screen. But so today she's an ASEAN expert. She lived 2 years in ASEAN. Before we have I don't know whether our Indonesian friends in this room, before President Widodo came to power, I heard the rumor that he was so much interested in ASEAN. But 2 years later, I don't know whether he's overdoing or not, but I think now President Widodo pay a lot of attention on ASEAN. Having said that, I think the rule of game is that I will give everybody 10 minutes each, and then we could do the wrap up, and then maybe time for QA. And I think the key is that with all these dimensions, how could ASEAN connectivity serve your purpose? And how would you suggest the government official in this room, what else we should be doing more to make the connectivity under your responsibility much easier? I will start with the money come first. No money, no game. So, Mr. Brin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Kap. Thank you for the kind introductions. And I guess you're starting from the most evil side of things, going towards the more angel side of things, because the bankers are always seen as the one operate on the darker sides. And we often get blamed for all the financial crisis and all the wrongdoings, all the inequality the world is seeing, especially now that the latest trend in the world, as you probably know, is not the rise of democracy, but the rise of ochlocracy. Ochlocracy, O-C-H-L-O-C-R-A-C-Y. Ochlocracy is the rules by the mobs, or mobs rules. It happens in many countries, and the minority voices, doesn't have to be just NGO, can be heard more. It's the reason why you get Brexit, reason why you get people like Donald Trump elected in the US. There's a reason why Duterte get elected in Philippines, perhaps, and perhaps you will see interesting political dynamics, developments in Thailand over coming months as well on that front. I say this as a backdrop because it is a big challenge for us, especially in the banking world where the big threat, i.e. the deglobalization, the efforts, the movement of victimize what is being seen as capitalism is on a big retreat. And the evil sign has been slapped on the bankers. And when global trade retreats, when barriers are being erected, it is tough. Not just tough for businesses, but tough, I'm sure, even for relatively less prosperous guys on the street. luckily, unfortunately, partly the strength, I think, from ASEAN, the strength from within, and I'm sure the strength from within in India, domestic economy, has made our markets much more resilient towards some of these global shocks, some of these challenges that happen around the world. So we are blessed with that side of things. But over the next 5 or 10 years, I think the challenge will be how do we integrate better? You've seen the rise of superpowers, new world orders, so to speak, because Donald Trump has clearly wanted the US incrementally stepping back. You know, he will choose his game or where he wants to engage, but he will not be like Obama to come out with pivot to Asia. It will not be that kind of interactions. It will be selective and on his own terms, America first. I'm not blaming that because any country is always going to have their sovereignty and their interests of their population at heart first. But in a forever more integrating world and the way we interact, I think if you can find a win-win scenarios and areas where you can cooperate and governments, civil society, private sector, it's our job to interact and find that common ground. Because without us interacting, for me personally, there's research, and I will delve a bit more into details. I don't want to have slides today because it will bore you to death. I'm sure you've seen all the technical terms, some of the diplomatic words, some of the more charming kind words from all the more esteemed ministers and other speakers already. I may be a bit more blunt and a bit more direct, and I may apologize first if my comments may hurt some of your feelings, some of the feelings of some of our friends in governments. Please make sure that I have no ill intentions, but I only have the very best to want to see the progress for both the region and the prosperity, relatively as well for the whole inequality situation to improve. And I must say this because the connectivity for me in India personally have gone back a long way. And many of you Thais who study abroad would remember the flight, the TG flight, Thai Airways, flying to London. I studied in England as a high school and went to school there. I worked in England for many years. I lived there for 15 years in Europe, in England, in France, and then I worked in Hong Kong for 5 years. So as a regional equity investor, so I go to India at least 3 or 4 times a year when I was working in Hong Kong for 5 years. And when I was a student, of course, the Thai Airways flight always stopped in Delhi on the way to London. In those days, there's no direct flight between Thailand, Bangkok to London. This was back in the early 90s. 1990 was the year when I started going to study there. And so it's interesting always that you've seen some of my Indian friends who study at Charterhouse, one of the British public school that I went to. We have many Indian friends, and they would get on the flight in Delhi, or some people connect flight from other city to join the flights and go on to London. And we always have a good laugh on the flight on the way there. Many friends from India, Atul Goyal, has gone back to India, you know, having been a successful investment banker with Citibank in the city of London. He's gone back to India to do startups. A lot of the interesting money has been raised by him as a venture capitalist to invest in startups, in SME companies with high technological capabilities, some companies in fintech, some companies in the biotechnological area, some company in the IT services sector. Some companies, I may say, has challenged the traditional businesses in India. HDFC has been one of the largest financial institutions in India, but there's a company called Bajaj Finance, which I'm sure many of our Indian friends would know. If you have not known this company, check out the share price of the company, which I think have gone up about 20 plus times over the last 5 or 6 years. It's been an amazing success story, and I commend. This is, you know, no sweet talking for our Indian friends, and I'll come to some challenges later. But this is a great sample where, for me personally, some of the ASEAN countries and us in the private sector and the government sector can learn. Because Bajaj Finance success is no fluke. It is a combination of work between the private and the public sector. Bajaj Finance, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is a company that does personal lendings online. And of course, sometimes getting approval for personal loans online can be cumbersome and difficult and take time. In Thailand, it can take 2 or 3 days, sometimes in cases 5 or 6 days. I'm not sure we have any commercial bankers in the room, but these days, with the problem with the household debt in Thailand being quite high, the restriction and the difficulty of extending the credits can be even tougher, and many rejections, because NPL is already quite high. But have a guess, if you go online, click, and you have a guess how long would it take to approve your loan? Have a rough guess. I've got a little Chinese restaurant in Thailand called the Four Seasons Roast Duck Restaurant, so 1 duck. No Indian, please. No Indian can answer this question. It will be unfair. Any Thais want to answer? Any Indonesian, any other ASEAN countries? Have a guess how many days, how many hours, how many? No answer? No one want my roast duck? One day? Half a day? 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes. It is a success and a testament to how Indian government have e-cataloged their nations, their populations. It's 1.8 billion now, population of India. You may have cataloged almost 1 billion people. Thailand ourselves is a country of 70-something million population, give and take, plus and minuses. We're talking about Thailand 4.0. I'm sure many other ASEAN countries also talk about online, about e-commerce, about digital economy. I'm sure many people talk about it. But how many countries really follow through and do what the Indians did? Many people often talk about Indian government not having red tape, bureaucracy, ease of doing business, not easy. How can a country like India, who every country is trying to throw some maybe perhaps unfair dirt at them saying they're bureaucratic and cannot get this through? This is blockchain at its best. We all talk about blockchain and about how you would manage the big data, data analytics. How do you allow and use that access to maximize the potential of your economy, of your people, especially for startup and SME? Every country wants their SME for the smaller guys to prosper. But which country has learned from the samples of not so much of a distant neighbors, distant friends in India nearby, where blockchain has allowed you to get personal loan online? Other companies in India have also, there are other companies called Edelweiss with Financial, which is also another company that has a very, very innovative financial products, advisory services, and again, their stock price, our Indian friend would say, has gone up the roof. So it's been a brilliant success story for me personally to learn from how governments in India have managed the public expectation in terms of data disclosure, privacy, along with the fact that they can enable this whole blockchain e-catalog to get the national IDs and all the credit bureau data to be in the same areas and to be the benefit for the population to access to capital. Because that way then you get rid of all the loan sharks, all the dark market, incrementally helping them. I'm not even going to mention the whole demonetization, the whole new issuing of new notes that happened in India. That's another brave decision by Modi that's allowed part of the anti-corruption campaign to be successful. Part of that has been successful. So how many countries, especially in Thailand, where I think there are too many banknotes, if we get rid of 1,000 baht banknote, that would be great. You get rid of part of the corruption overnight. It would be awesome. But again, that is a dream. I'm talking dream there. That's what the private sector wants to see. But it's more difficult. Who will be as brave as Modi to do that? I see some good sample like this that I hope. And when I speak to my friends, when CLSA reach out to our friends in India, we have a big office in Mumbai, we have a big forum in Gurgaon, a town near Delhi, an hour from Delhi, where we host annual Indian forum there. And I would extend invitation later on to some of you to join our forum. I'll be in India in November as well. So I still go back to India at least once or twice a year. I used to go 4 times a year. I may be speaking about success from the Indian side, but what can we work together better in the financial world? Financial flow both ways. And Thai companies, admittedly, I'm just giving a Thai sample first before I go into some of the ASEAN sample. But companies in Thailand have been trying to do business in India as well. There are some success stories, some tough times. But one area where Your Excellency mentioned is on the cultural side, the softer side, where we have seen exchanges successfully. One of the companies in Thailand called Major Cineplex, which is the largest entertainment cinema company in Thailand, owned by Kun Visha Punarak, has been successfully investing in India and teaming up, own the shares in Indian company called PVRL. PVR, as the Indian friend know, is one of the most successful entertainment, cinema, bowling lane. Those come from Thailand. They've come from our own, if you guys go and walk around shopping malls and go to Siam Paragon nearby, you will see Major Cineplex in Siam Paragon. You see the bowling lanes, you see the karaoke in the bowling lanes, you see the cinemas of top quality in the world, I would argue. And cinema business here is quite dominant by Major Cineplex. But I think Ajay or someone, the owner of PVR, is a very good friend with Kun Visha. Kun Visha invested, I think, 10 to 15% in that company. He's now divesting the stakes away after the stock has gone up, I think 5 or 6 times over the last few years due to the successful cooperation and co-investment, both from Kun Visha. But he doesn't just invest. It was not just a financial investment. It was a transfer of knowledge, know-how, technology, and the services that the ASEAN countries and Thailand, that we have the strength. We know how to provide the fun, entertaining, authentic, genuine, sincere services. And we like to have fun. In fact, actually, to be fair, Indian people like to have fun. So therefore, there is a little bit of a cultural issue that I think that can happen on that area. And cinemas and movies, I'm sure Bollywood movies actually has been doing well and seen the rise in popularity in the ASEAN countries. And some of the share in terms of and this kind of softer side of the cultural economy for me is the first area where we must establish. It would connect the people to people. It would re-energize. It would give the impetus and the inspiration for people to connect. Because if you speak to business at home, businessmen in India are saying, why should I come to ASEAN? I've got a lot of capacity at home enough. I'm growing at home 40% per year or more. Company like Bajaj Finance, I told you the stock has risen 20 times, but guess what? They're still growing 45% this year. And for the next 5 years, they can still grow at this rate. Why would they have capacity to bring their business to ASEAN countries? So for me, on that side of things, I'm starting an alliance. It's not just a private equity alliance and not just a finance alliance. It is an alliance that I hope will bring in people-to-people connection, not just stock exchange to stock exchange. And from my job as a stock exchange governor on the board of governors of the Stock Exchange of Thailand, we can learn a lot from India, example, and other countries as well. India have 2 stock exchanges. Before they split, they only have 1, right? When they split to 2, there was a big cry, there was a protest, anger, oh, why do we need 2 exchanges? Now both exchanges are prospering, competing for the best services, the best liquidity, the best pricing. That's also an example where we can learn from India again, a country where some people claim has got huge bureaucracy. How can you get 2 exchanges managing so efficiently and the capital market there works for everyone? Sure, of course, there are cases where there are stock punting and perhaps front running and perhaps whatever. There are that kind of things in every country. But you learn that they're also trying to improve their corporate governance and the listing rules. And the SEC, the regulators of stock exchange in India, I would argue, as tough as anyone, second to none in terms of the way they regulate their exchange. A lesson that the Security Exchange Commission, SEC, the regulators in Thailand can learn. The Bank of Thailand, I'm just picking on my own men in Thailand here. I won't pick on our friends in other countries yet. They've got to learn from the central bank in India. How do they regulate the financial sector to allow the competition from the new technology, the new economy to prosper? How do they regulate and allow the fintech to rise and prosper? In Thailand, we protect. I'm not sure it's the same experience in our other ASEAN friends country, but in Thailand, we protect our big banks. We protect them because stability, perhaps, as an excuse. And I have my friend here who is at the Siam Commercial Bank sitting here smiling. He's in the same condo as me, so he might bash my head off afterwards for joking. But he's a very nice Indian friend, Indian Thai, who works at Siam Commercial Bank, one of the best run banks in Thailand. But the central bank in Thailand and the Thai Bankers Association, they're best friends. They support each other. I'm not saying they collude, but in terms of the actual protectionism and the cartels, there is a reason why the economy is not recovering. The small guys are getting SME, are charging interest rates so high. How could it work? You talk about Thailand 4.0. Most people in Thailand feel like it's 0.4.
Maybe I should stop him here.
So I'm giving some examples and challenges. But I think we can learn in corporations. And there are consumers firms in India, actually, who wants to invest more in ASEAN. And in fact, we've seen M&A. I'm saying there are lawyers here, M&A bankers here, I see, who does international deals and whatnot. The flows are going both ways. And I hope it accelerates because China has been very, very friendly on the deal fronts to ASEAN and Thailand. I'm certainly thinking that it's clearly untapped and the big potential for Indian firms. I know the capacity at home is huge, the potential is huge, but I think incrementally you will see more actions coming this way. Have I run out of time?
Thank you, Gab. Thank you, Mr. Brin.
I'm
sorry, I have to stop him. I let him go over time, a few minutes over time, but it was mind opening and follow the Indian example. We always use this in the foreign ministry, right? Ambassador Sam, the best practice. So, luckily my wife is not here with Bank of Thailand, so I'm sure you have to learn. I have to learn from the governor. The Bank of Thailand, we have to follow best practices, and I think he has shared with us a good concrete example. I think if we have more Thai like him who could articulate, because the Thai still don't. We need to get the Thai to aware, to appreciate, to understand. And only Thai, those who live in Thailand, those my Indian friends live in Thailand, you know how the Thai have certain perception about India. They need to get rid of this psychological barrier. And I think Minister of Commerce is here. They're the host. If you recall, AEC. I was doing ASEAN Community, but nobody knows about ASEAN Community. Everybody knows about AEC because it's in the hand of Minister of Commerce. So I hope you will grab him and make sure he would be the face of ASEAN Indian connectivity because he understands it, he's been there, he knows. And thank you. So now this from the private sector. You can also be blunt, Ambassador Chutinon. You can be blunt also about your presentation. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm always blunt, but maybe not as blunt as Kun Prin. But anyway, in terms of introduction of what I define my job in Delhi is, it's to get Thais to see the new India, but also to get Indians to see the full potential of Thailand. So that's what I do. And a lot of my ASEAN colleagues or other diplomats find it unusual that I spend 40% of my time talking about ASEAN, another 40% talking about India, and the rest, talking about Thailand. Because when I talk about ASEAN and India, I am serving my country's interest. And within ASEAN, I talk a lot about CLM, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, because that's where I'd like to see India and ASEAN, but also Thailand, expanding into that real estate, which is, at the moment, it's the cheapest real estate in ASEAN. You're not barred from going to other parts of ASEAN, but there is where the opportunity is. It's ASEAN's West, but I'd like you to think of it as when people moved in the US, from East to West, that's where the golden land is. Anyway, sorry, I'm not going to read, but I have notes, so that I don't forget. The other point is that I've always believed that connectivity is endless. So when why does it have to stop at the end of ASEAN? Why does it have to stop in India? Why not go further? So when ASEAN came up with the master plan on ASEAN connectivity, the next year when Indonesia hosted APEC, we tabled that at APEC. Why do you have to think twice? Why do you have to pay consultants twice, right? And then after that, last year, we proposed it in something called ACD, Asia Cooperation Dialogue, a group of 34 Asian countries, okay? And now it's going to come to another regional grouping as well in BIMSTEC. But all this is just the blueprint. My message will be that we have to implement, and there was a recent an assessment of ASEAN at 50 in Japan. And basically they said, if we can implement all that we have agreed, we will be, the fourth largest economy in the world. So we don't lack documents, okay, but we need to fill in the gaps. But maybe that's the nature of Asians, maybe that's ASEAN nature that Indians need to discover, that when we had the first ASEAN free trade agreement, the Thais would say that it's agree first, talk later, okay? I think that's fine. You move at the comfort level of everyone. But we can all congratulate ourselves that we live in, ASEAN and India, which are two of the most dynamic regions, in the world. I have a lot of work in Delhi. I hardly have any weekends. But I tell myself it's better than being somewhere where nothing's going on. And then you wonder, what the hell am I going to do, right? So it's better to be busy than not to be busy. And now is a good time to be part of India and ASEAN. Yes, everyone's talked about GST and so on. Coming to connectivity, connectivity is absolutely necessary, to expand trade, tourism, investment, and education. And it is the solid foundation for RCEP. We can agree an RCEP agreement, let's say, hopefully the end of this year, maybe next year. But if the hardware is not in place, the software is not in place, it's not going to happen. In that sense, India likes to talk about the Indian Northeast region, which has the most cultural links with ASEAN, and it's next door to ASEAN. Indian colleagues will say that it's the beginning of ASEAN. And so I went there. You know, that's my first trip out of Delhi. And then I discovered that, yes, we do look alike, and there's, you know, people think I'm from Manipur until I open my mouth, and then they say, where are you from? But otherwise, I can blend in. And it's a nice place. But when I go back to Delhi, I tell my Indian colleagues, but we want to be connected to all of India. We don't just want this corner of India, okay? The other reality check is that, yes, you may be able to go from, you know, India to Myanmar to Thailand, but it's not ready for the massive trade that everyone is hoping to get, you know? First border trade and then beyond. Because we've been through all this before in ASEAN. The trucks that line up on the road, you know, for 5 hours. Once the former Prime Minister of Laos said at the border checkpoint between China and Laos, they take 5 hours to get to the checkpoint, and then they wait for another 5 hours to, you know, do customs, immigration, and quarantine. And I can see that happening. Yes, maybe people don't like to hear that, you know, because the dream of the trilateral highway is one that goes right to the top. The leaders like to mention it. And that's why I say it's symbolic, you know, because they envision that people can, you know, travel and visit each other. You can go and have lunch, and, you know, and it's like Europe. But don't forget that Europe has done away with its border checkpoints. Even in conversations in Thailand before I was sent to India, I think positively, you know, I don't know, maybe they got tired of me, but they were talking about, in terms of connectivity, we have to build these massive border posts and, you know, overnight stops. People can fix their trucks, you know, they can sleep over and so on and so forth. And I said, what you're building is too small. You know, you should look at, watch National Geographic and look at the truck stops in the US. Or better yet, why don't you forego the whole idea of these truck stops? You know, because in Europe, we're doing away with them. But then the people in the meeting said, these things, change takes time. In Europe, they took 40 years. So sometimes we have to go through the same cycles, you know. But if we don't have to do that all the time, that would be better. One of the things I learned, you know, being part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is that when you go to meetings like OECD or APEC, you already know what the future is. There are countries that are in your future, living your future already. They ask the question, you know, if you know what the future is 20 years from now, what would you do differently? And I said that looking around the table, I already know what the future is 20 years from now. So I just learn, you know, we just have to learn from those that are ahead of us. You know, there's nothing that is really new, okay? But Northeast is a symbol, and as ambassador to India, together with my ASEAN colleagues, we have to deliver something concrete on the ground. Because, you know, I went for the first time, but they have annual meetings there. We can't keep going back and then saying the same things and hoping to do the same things. But what I see there, it's not quite as high-tech as what we're doing in this room, but it's more sustainable tourism, you know, value add for local agricultural products, and so on. Those are things, and I'm going to try to work with the India Studies Center in Chulalongkorn University and with the ASEAN Studies Center in Shillong. Okay? And that's the only way that ASEAN will mean anything. Otherwise, it's just an annual meeting every year.
Maybe, Ambassador, maybe
have I done 10 minutes already?
More than 10 minutes.
Really?
You have one more point to make.
Have I done more? It's hard to believe. Okay, then I have to get to
Last point.
My conclude. You're very tough. Anyway, okay, the future is bright, but the mechanisms are in place. But I think the ASEAN-India work can be done much better. ASEAN colleagues in Jakarta are so busy that they're almost working blind, you know. They run from meetings to meetings and so on. It can be more integrated, better fine-tuning, better syncing. The ASEAN New Delhi Committee and the ASEAN Committee of Permanent Representatives in Jakarta, we speak a different language because the India work is set in the context of the whole ASEAN globe, but our focus in India is on India, okay? But so we need to integrate the mechanisms better. I understand that Thailand, for example, is going to have a meeting of all the ASEAN studies centers in all of the ASEAN countries and all of the dialogue partners. You would think that is a basic step, right? But that hasn't been done. So everyone does their own thing according to the blueprint, you know? But I think they need to talk. The other one is what we push a lot in Delhi is we would like to see India play a bigger role in ASEAN. And we tell the Indians that Japan is a good role model because our relationship, ASEAN's relationship with Japan is not painful at all, apart from the fact that they ask for a lot of information and data. But that's okay, you know, and we have never felt under pressure, you know, from Japan or any arm twisting and so on and so forth. So we would like to see India play a role in ASEAN. It's been said yesterday that we complement each other in many ways, so I don't have to mention that. And of course, the final point is that I'm an APEC man and I'm an OECD man. So I would like to see us intensify our relationship through forums like APEC. You know, I believe that after 2020, the moratorium on membership will be open. Thailand, fortunately, will host APEC in 2022. So I'm going to sell this idea. And then as for OECD, some in India see OECD as the devil. But some are beginning to warm up to it through the G20. But I believe that OECD, as it has done for Thailand, the SecGen is coming later this month, will help with our reforms. You know, you don't have to become a member of the OECD. You just have to learn from those around the table, both good and bad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. You made quite a few important points. Symbolic. Yes. Wedding ring, small, but it's symbolic. I mean, if you're married, you have to wear a wedding ring. Northeast is symbolic, as he said. You know, and we remember we demonstrate that we drove from Indonesia to Guwahati to Assam in 2012. I was part of that. You were part of that. And but maybe you could look in this way. If you look at ASEAN, basically ASEAN has two parts, mainland and maritime. How could we have such a good connectivity with Brunei and Indonesia, Philippines, and all that? You know, we have it. You know, I mean, we claim that we have it because we're a community and we have this master plan on ASEAN connectivity. So with Indian ASEAN connectivity, yes, the Northeast is the chicken neck. It's nice, delicious, you know, chicken neck. But you need that, and later, who knows, if you could link the Northeast through Bangladesh to the river down, then that will open up a vast opportunity also. And in the East Coast, as you know better, all these 12 harbors that link through maritime and aviation. Yesterday, somebody said we have over 400 flights from India. So aviation, maritime, already sort of do what this other maritime ASEAN is doing. And I'm looking forward to this 2020 Trilateral Highway, the opening of that route, because we have promised, but you have to implement and follow up. We have to turn that into an economic corridor from Moree through to Rangoon and to Mysore. That has to be an important economic corridor linking ASEAN to India. And yes, we have your top agenda, APEC and OECD. I hope you've been invited to share with the Foreign Ministry expertise. So we hear the financial side, real experience, interact with India, build up friendships since childhood, and then the diplomatic. Now the real world, the money making, the empire of Reliance, the industry. Let's hear from the President, Mr. Udeshi, but how could ASEAN-India connectivity, how could we expand further, you know, interest. Thank you.
Thank you. I think all of us, we know we have a large population in India, around 1.25 billion people staying in India. Average age of Indian today is 26 years. I think great opportunity. The large population sometimes becomes your weakness, but it becomes a strength for market. We in India have a very strong legal system, reasonably strong the financial system, and also we have intellectual capital available. I think we are growing at the rate of almost 7.3% GDP growth. We have just implemented we call it GST. We believe with the implementation of GST, India will improve its GDP growth, hopefully by another 0.5%. The concentration in India has been originally for agriculture, then we went into industry, and now we are also concentrating on IT sector. So digital revolution, we call it. That becomes one of the key area for India, and whether India and ASEAN country can work together to utilize this digital revolution to improve the manufacturing processes, to improve the cost structure, to improve the overall customer satisfaction. I think that is going to be the new area of working between India and ASEAN. I think a lot of our companies are working internationally on an IT sector. India is participating in some of the manufacturing activity in Thailand and other ASEAN countries. I know many Indian companies are working in Thailand. Few companies are working in Malaysia. And of course, a lot of trading activity is taking place in Singapore. Indonesia also, there are a lot of Indian companies, along with other Chinese companies, are dominating some of the manufacturing sector. We strongly believe that digital revolution can change. It can change the total structure of the industry. I think big data, we see, I tell my people that last decade was a strength of oil, which was the biggest asset for the world. In today's scenario, in time to come, the big data is going to be the biggest asset for all the companies. We are seeing Uber, we are seeing some of the SMEs, some of the startups who have started their work, and the companies which are having a large database which can be utilized for converting into opportunity is going to be the future of the industry. I tell my people in my own company, we are the refinery company, petrochemical company, and now we are going into the service industry also. But with a lot of cars going into electric cars or auto cars, what will you do with the oil? So we need to look into new opportunity, new database, convert that new database into new applications. We are seeing some of the Indian companies, they are burning cash, like Uber or Flipkart or some other companies. What they are trying to create in the process is creating and capturing the database, creating the top line for the companies, and in this process, they are improving and creating the valuation for their own self. We have seen digitization in the manufacturing process, in textile industry. We saw textile industry when it started, somewhere in 1970, 75. It was mainly a manual kind of operation. Then they went into the next stage where they saw the electrification, and then the next stage went into the automation, and today now we are in a robotized, like a robotic textile mill. What happens that you have no touch, you feed the raw material at the one stage, create the data, utilize that data into programming and create the fabric and convert into the end product. I think the fashion garment also is experiencing the similar change in the industry. I think the time will come where there will not be any showrooms. The person will go in a small shop and see what he wants. He creates the image for himself, gives the impression of what he wants, what color he wants, what kind of fitting he wants, and the database will create an image for him or her, how he or she would look in the new fashion, new garment, and he or she gives an order for that. In this process, you don't need a large shops. What you need is a brain power. What you need is a digitalization of the experience zone for the people, and create what you want and have what you want. So I think this is the change what we are seeing globally. The robotics today have started working out a garmenting. You just stand in the front of the mirror and robotic measurement would allow you to have the exact measurement. You feed the raw material at the one stage, and in few hours you get the garment at the end of the other side. So you don't need a large showroom for garmenting. You get the experience zone of the customer and create the garment what he wants. I think India and Thailand and India and ASEAN country need to work. I used to tell my people that originally most of the product used to come in this part of the world from US and Europe. We saw when the cost of manufacturing became too expensive in this part of the world, we saw two satellites develop subsequently. We saw Taiwan and Korea became the next satellite for Japanese company who could not afford to produce the commodity product. Subsequently, due to various reasons, those two countries could not sustain their activity, and we saw Indonesia and Thailand became the next satellite. And now we are seeing India and China are becoming the next satellite for manufacturing zone. I think this is the scenario. So I think all of us in ASEAN country, I think needs to be competitive, change the manufacturing processes, change the manufacturing cost, and create the experience zone for customer to get the best out of it. I think the time has come where most of the ASEAN country wants to be more competitive compared to Chinese manufacturing activity. I have been visiting China many times and observing that the cost of manufacturing in China is becoming expensive. The cost of power is becoming expensive. The labor cost, what was there a few years ago, today it is almost 2.5 times the cost what they used to have it. So China is no more as competitive as it used to be, but the scaling of the operation in China is helping China to remain competitive in the measurement of cost and efficiency. I think India and ASEAN country, India and Thailand need to work together to bring the efficiency, so that we become equally competitive in the marketplace. I've read a lot of papers on RCEP. I think that is going to be the new area where the entire ASEAN country, along with China, are going to work together, going to remove all the barriers. Maybe it will take 10 years or 15 years time to bring down those barriers from, suppose if you are having a duty of 5% today as a protection, will bring down in a gradual way in 10 years to bring down at a zero level, so that the survival of the fittest, survival of the competitive world would be the new mantra for entire economy. So I want, wish would be from our side that let's look for new revolution. Let's look for new experience zone. Let's look for efficiency on the cost structure. Let's work together on various cooperation. We can work on the complement each other rather than compete each other. So this is my message to all ASEAN countries. And of course, this message I do carry from India to be given to all the ASEAN countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, well, working together. I think all ASEAN countries already position themselves, for this disruptive technology, digital revolution. Mr. Prin mentioned about 4.0. Is also the key component of the connectivity, ASEAN connectivity on the physical pillar. We have this ICT, and Thailand have just set up a digital ministry. And yes, I think we should work together and benefit from each other experience. And now, you mentioned about no showroom. Even now with the handphone, you already have your pictures and you have your sticker on your own pictures. And I mean, if you can do that already today, it's that is coming very soon, I'm pretty sure. In Thailand, some big Indian company already has. Yesterday I went through the booth, and I think LT Construction already have set up, have done some work with the ECAT here. There's a big infrastructure on electricity connectivity. Because at the moment, all ASEAN country electricity grid have been linked, except for Thailand and Myanmar, because Myanmar need to construct the Irrawaddy Dam and only that side. But all ASEAN, basically, we are linked to through electricity grid already. So I hope the Reliance industry will set up shop in Thailand pretty soon and expand your presence from other already you have in ASEAN. RCEP, yes, because the connectivity embody a lot of AEC, and of course that a lot of that is already included in the RCEP, and basically we talk about the same thing. And from digital, now could we move to the sub-regional business database development, whether we could also learn from the best practice there, because we have to deal with other sub-regional grouping in South Asia and other part of ASEAN countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to all of you. This session, basically, I would like to introduce some of the activities this Mekong Institute is doing in the sub-region that includes the Greater Mekong sub-region. For our Indian friends who might be new to this region, I would just like to introduce the preliminary note on this. The Greater Mekong GMS stands for the Greater Mekong sub-region that comprises of 6 countries, including 2 provinces of China, that is Yunnan and Kwansi province, and Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. So this is one of the region which was being promoted with assistance from the Asian Development Bank, started in 1992, with emphasis on basically 9 key sectors. And one of the major emphasis was on promoting the connectivity, that is to promote transport corridors. So that program started since 1992, basically with the principles of 3C. There's one is on connectivity, one is to improve competitiveness among the GMS countries, and third is to build up a sense of community that is called the GMS community. And as I said, connectivity is the discussions of today's forum, so I would emphasize on this. And if you look into the GMS sub-region cooperation framework, that has come out with 9 economic corridors in the region. And out of these, 3 are the main corridors. That is North-South Economic Corridor. Another one is the East-West Economic Corridor. And the third is the Southern Economic Corridor. Apart from that, there are a number of interlinked corridors. And over the years, now there's some review going on to rearrange or reorient the corridors, basically also to connect Yangon, that is basically extending the East-West Economic Corridor up to Yangon, basically for the port, and the North-South Corridor also to include and extend up to Mandalay and Tamu, that will also assist the India, Myanmar, and Thailand trilateral highway. So this is a general backdrop. And at Mekong Institute is an intergovernmental organization promoted by the 6 GMS countries. We are working on the number of initiatives focusing on the economic corridor and basically on the human resource capacity development. One of our aim is basically to promote institutional and also business connectivity within the region. So this is a project that we initiated with support from China, basically to enhance inter and inter-trade connectivity in the North-South Economic Corridor. These are the different, the provinces and towns that we worked in this corridor, basically to promote business to business and improve trade facilitation in the corridor. As a part of this project, we have come out to created a database. This database is available. That is a business-to-business e-platform. At the moment, we have key features includes provincial profiles. We have 6 provincial business profiles, including 4 municipalities and 10 township level information. This provincial level site gives you a complete information on the businesses, particularly on the infrastructure, on financial support systems, cost of doing business, and et cetera, et cetera. As a part of that, we have also, for the sustainability and data updating, we have also signed memorandum of understanding with the Provincial Chamber of Commerce. And apart from the provincial profile, this also hosts around more than 800 company profiles in the corridor. So this site is basically allowing the companies to build networking capabilities and also do some business-to-business activities. So there are a number of features available in this site as well. We are also having the MOU with Alibaba.com to integrate e-commerce platform in this site. Apart from that, we are also working with support from the Japan-ASEAN Integration Fund in a project in the Southern Economic Corridor. This corridor comprises of 19 provinces along the Southern Corridor, with one state in Myanmar, 6 provinces in Thailand. In Cambodia, there are 8 provinces, and in Vietnam, 4 provinces. There are several activities, basically on trade facilitation and improving the competitiveness of the small, medium-sized enterprises. And one of the activity is to promote e-commerce platform. Apart from that, we also working on the SME clusters. So we are working on business development initiative and networkings. We have created 19 SME clusters on different product lines. These are the list. And these clusters are getting linked with the cluster in Japan. So you can see they are specific to each cluster. We have linked up with the cluster in Japan. This is basically on range of activities on business matching, which could be on skill development, R&D, technology transfer, and other opportunities. For the Southern Economic Corridor, we have also come out with a database. This is also having provincial business profiles of all the 19 provinces. It also includes, at the moment, around 732 companies are registered. They are different types. Then we also have the profiles of the Trade Promotion Office of all the provinces. And the SMEs or the enterprises can also have the facility of showcasing their products. That facility is there. There's also another function on technology request. The SMEs or the SME cluster can put their request related to any kind of technology, and it is transferred or transmitted to the Otagai Association platform. In Otagai Association platform in Japan, we have nearly 30,000 SMEs from different parts of the country. So this this information is transmitted, and interested SMEs get linked with these SMEs in the corridor. Apart from that, we have other services as well in this database. For the updation and data sharing, we also have the MOU and agreement with all the Chamber of Commerce in the corridor. We also have worked on the East-West Economic Corridor. This is important from the Indian perspective as well because of the trilateral highway. As I mentioned, that the East-West Corridor is likely to get extended onto Yangon, and it is passing through the Thailand, also the part of Myanmar. And if we have the trilateral India-Myanmar Thailand highway extended to Vietnam and Laos, this will be another useful component for such project. Here also we have developed the web platform. These have all the similar features with nearly 1,659 company profiles at the moment. They also have the e-commerce promotion activities and also buyer and seller functions. We have also created another database for the logistics. So this is the logistic database. We are working to have around 2,000 logistic companies, including freight forwarders, ICD, inland container depot operators, warehouse owners, cold chains, trucking companies in the GMS country. But this is for Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Thailand. So in this platform, the companies can build networking capability, they can exchange information, they can access to company information, and if any truck or something is moving from, say, Bangkok to Phnom Penh, and they are looking for the partner there they can access. The empty truck running, that was one of the main issues, so this is also to some extent taken care of by this site. Another important feature is that we are developing the mobile application system, so the GMS logistic operators can download the application on their smartphone, and they can continue doing the business networking through this site. For the Indian businesses, they can access to all the sites that I have mentioned. So we have information of nearly 40 provincial level business-related information. We have around 5,000 company, which is increasing day by day. And we have also information related to all national and provincial level, any regulations or any agreements or the bilateral agreements for the cross-border trade. We have also facilities for any information by any Indian businesses to post in the public forum, which will be transmitted to the interested parties. And this builds up an institutional networking platform for the Provincial Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Provincial Department of Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the corridor with the counterparts in India. And apart from that, we have, as I mentioned, the logistics service facilities. This is one of very important aspect for the Indian businesses to look for certain facilities to do business with our companies in the region. With this, I conclude. Thank you very much.
GMS came to being in 1992, and you recall the situation in Southeast Asia in 1992, what it was like, and it was, in fact, the year when India joined ASEAN 25 years ago. Because of GMS, Vietnam, because they talk about connectivity, having worked with us, Vietnam felt confident to join ASEAN. Vietnam have joined, Laos, Cambodia joined, and the whole gang joined. So and GMS really focus on a lot on physical connectivity, all these corridors, and of course it has nine sectors that we not turn road into sort of economic corridors also. So I would urge you to have a look at the James Mekong Institute website, and that also remind you that we also ASEAN connectivity. We also have a website because that's part of the information sharing. We have like a virtual website based in Jakarta, so you could access and get all the information about different countries of ASEAN. And I think I will suggest to my colleague in Jakarta that maybe you should also create another window, ASEAN-India connectivity, and link all the information that should be known. Because it's also new to me that all these corridors, there's a lot of business opportunity which you could benefit from working with Indian counterparts. So I think that could be the way forward. And we could also see how could we apply that to BIMSTEC, to SAARC, or to all those sub-regions, because Jim is really a very successful sub-regional grouping. Ms. Chanti, you are ready to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Kun Pratap. Good morning, everyone. So earlier, Kun Pratap, I think he did mention that I was advising the President of Indonesia on ASEAN. And I would not take the credit of how he changed from being inward towards the region to really taking an active role today. But I'll share with you on what I did actually talk to him, what my conversation with him with regards to Southeast Asia. So he asked me, he said, what is this regional business about? Is it worth it for us as Indonesia, as a country, to engage into the regional business and take active participation? The example I gave to him was, look at it this way. There's this huge wave of water that is building up, which we call in today's world as trade, international trade regime. So if you don't open the door, it's going to crack the walls and it will somehow get into the country. Like it or not, globalization is here, it's here to grow, and it's here to revolutionize a lot of things that we do today will have to change. Whether you allow that change to come from within, or you take control of the change, or whatever format you take, it's really up to the leaders or the governments to decide that. There are a lot of resistance, as always, a lot of resistance to change. I was in Hyderabad a couple of weeks ago with the RCEP meeting. There was an NGO protest. I was in an APAC meeting. There was an NGO protest several years ago. I went to a G20 meeting. There's an NGO protest. There are protests everywhere, and it is normal. It is normal because change is happening, and it is normal that change is always resisted before it could take full form. So I think with this understanding, I'm going to really touch today on discussing how revolutionizing connectivity through robust economic reforms. And the example is here. If I could just have the... Thank you. Very quickly, I would like to take the example of corridors. I'm not just talking about Eastern economic corridors, but there are a lot of other corridors between countries, intra-countries that we see taking place today. The question we need to be asking ourselves is, why is it taking place? What are these corridors? What are these agreements? Why are they there? Compared to 15, 20 years ago when I started my career at the ASEAN Secretariat, it was a big deal for us to have 2 agreements in 1 year. That was the early days, and we could focus on it properly. We could really manifest those agreements properly. Today, every 2-3 months, you see some kind of an MOU, some kind of an agreement taking a different form or shape or discussions going on. Why is this happening? What are we looking at in the next 2-3 decades? Where are we today? What should we do? Where our role is? And how do you actually participate in this? Again, the message here is you cannot resist this. This is happening. It is here to stay. It is here to grow. What we need to do is find out ways in terms of how to drive these waves. So the first slide here is, I don't know if this is very clear, but I think this presents the economic Eastern Corridor in terms of what is currently happening. If we take the whole world map, you will see a lot of dots, a lot of lines, and there's a lot of complicated trade deals taking place. So I'm going to focus more on Southeast Asia and on India. So the 4 core areas of development that you see, I mean, Thailand is in Southeast Asia. You see Thailand taking a very active role in driving ASEAN agenda. This has been true in the last 10 years. And this continues to be true today. A lot of institutes, a lot of studies, the Great Mekong Institute is in Thailand, ADB, there are a lot of other activities that connect Southeast Asia, that is studies on Southeast Asia, which is based in Thailand. So why is Thailand so gung-ho or so much forward towards this? The one answer to this is the geographical location. It sits on a very beneficial geographical location, and hence it is in a much better position to drive all these reforms forward. And I think the government has done an excellent job in doing this. The recent one is the 4.0 technology, which I'm going to touch a little bit more. But another example which I could give is this really taking out a new Ministry of Information Technology and changing it into Ministry of Digital Economy. I think that is an excellent message to Southeast Asia that technology is equal to digital economy. You need to transform digitalization into economic growth. I think this is one area where we see Thailand taking a very active role. I did mention earlier there are a lot of corridors. We ask ourselves, are these emerging benefits? What are these? Are these just projects for governments to justify spendings? Are these a look good move from the different countries? What are the emerging benefits? And I think I've been asked to speak today in terms of the business participation. And there's a chicken and egg story here, which I think many of you would have known. So when you go and talk to the government would ask myself, and when I was working in the capacity of a consultant, they would ask me and they would say, we are doing all these things. We are putting up this infrastructure. We are reforming economies and all that. But we don't see business potential. Where are the business? What if we put up all this road and there's no truck passing there? How can you justify that? So, and when you talk to the businesses, they're saying, why aren't the government putting up all this infrastructure? You know, we need to grow our trade. We need to grow our economy. There are a lot of potentials. So we need to align. And this is what I have seen happening, but not enough. I think as we go forward, governments and businesses needs to sit and align themselves on all the corridors or on the projects, everything that they plan to make, and say, look, this is what we have. We have this MOU, we have this plan, we have this bilateral, multilateral, we have this agreements. You are the business part. What can you contribute? Whether do you support this or do you not support this? We need to talk to the industry, not just one or two specific business, but we need to talk to the industry as a whole. Another very positive thing I see taking place at the Eastern Corridor is the touch points, the areas where it makes a lot of difference in our lives today and in the future. The next generation cars, you have seen that taking place. think Ambassador mentioned quite accurately in terms of, we need to figure out an alternate for oil. Like, if everything is going into solar and electricity, what is the energy, what are the oil resources we could use for? Medical and wellness tourism, I think Thailand has been part of a driver on this front. I'll touch a little bit on logistics and aviations, because I think whatever you're looking at, whether you're looking at smart electronics, whether you're looking at robotics, or you're looking at medical services, without logistics and aviation, you would not be, you won't be able to materialize this. This is one area where governments are beginning to realize this. There are good progress taking place on this front. There are good developments taking place on this front, and we need to continue to promote this. Very quickly, the target active, these are basically what are the focus on the Eastern Corridor at Roy An taking place. But again, I think what this slide is showing is that the direction of the Thai government is spot on. I think the Thai government have this, either they have a very good consultant working with them, or they have this crystal ball sitting somewhere in their government office that could actually tell what is going to happen and what they need to do, regardless of how the political situation is. I think what I've seen in Thailand working in this country for the last 10 years, the politics can take a different seat, but the business takes a different seat. But somehow, the government miraculously managed to understand business needs and managed to understand what the sentiments are going and really put up growth plans ahead. So I think this is something which, I need to really talk to someone within the Thai government to understand how did they manage to position themselves so well. Now, there are, of course, other skepticisms growing, and in terms of the 5 high priority projects to start in 2017, whether this is a wish list, whether this is real, is it going to transpire, to what extent it's going to happen, is this just going to be on a paper? I mean, we see speed bullet train might take off, and there's a lot of discussion on that one. But what about the city, the smart city? The 4.0, Thailand 4.0, there are a lot of investment that still needs to take place on that front. And part of the bottlenecks here is, if you talk about Thailand and India, India definitely wants a manufacturing market in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia, or specifically Thailand, wants the India's market, but India wants the services from Southeast Asia. And this is one area where I think if they manage to find the right equilibrium here, the Thailand 4.0 could work. I think a lot of India's IT services, a lot of India's brain power could really be put in place on the Thailand 4.0 project. I think this is something which both governments needs to sit and find out how to find a good alignment on this front. Last slide, One Belt, One Road. We can't ignore this. I think this is China driven, but this is one area where we need to pay close look at, even if we are focused on India ASEAN relationship, we can't ignore what is currently happening within the One Belt, One Road activities. Lastly, the Pakistan-China, again, my own Indian friends here today could actually fill me in on terms of what are the sentiments growing within the China getting closer to Pakistan. What is India's position? This is something which is currently very new, and I think this is something which there are a lot of discussions within the Indian governments themselves. So on that note, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Shanti. I am wondering whether I could ask the organizer for half an hour extension, because we have such an interesting panel here that we should have a lot of questions to shoot at them. Yes, I think Ms. Shanti should be a good ASEAN advocate. Should other ASEAN members like to engage her, and even though she lives in Singapore, I'm sure the Thai ASEAN Indian Business Council could get hold of her anywhere, anytime, and I think she will be more than pleased to help come up with a strategy how we could push, bring our countries closer together. All these corridors, I learned a bit more now about all these corridors. But back to my early point that ASEAN, we have two parts, maritime and mainland. The maritime is already excellently managed by a country like Singapore and Malaysia through Malacca Strait. That is a vital maritime route that is well managed by our ASEAN member states. The new creation would be this land-based multimodal transportation from Myanmar the way, Thailand, and go to CLMV up to China. Because ultimately, India also want to trade with China, China want to trade with India. It's such a huge market. And Myanmar, Thailand, Laos could provide a kind of a land-based multimodal network, transportation network for these two giants. I would advise you to get hold of the ASEAN Master Plan on connectivity. The first one is 2015, but still a lot of projects that remain to be accomplished, especially the soft side. As long as RCEP is not yet complete, the soft side of the ASEAN connectivity will not be complete. But the physical has gone a long way. We have done all the road, and the rails, surprisingly, is moved according to the schedule. We are now linked to Cambodia from Singapore. Aviation moving ahead well. And then I would also urge you to read the ASEAN Master Plan 2, ASEAN Master Plan 2025, because in there we have engaged American McKinsey, a lot of money. Somebody paid for us, of course. And they have identified 10 major trends that will have significant impact on infrastructure development. 10 trends, and I would urge you to advise you to take hold of that. Before closing, I would open the floor because we should not waste, our time, and we have a very distinguished panel here. So anybody would like to answer? Please keep it short because other participants are hungry, and anybody would like to shoot questions at anyone? Just please raise your hand. Ambassador Grit, please. He's a former ambassador to India. Our colleague at the economic department also. Please. I'm sorry why he's working on the microphone. And then after the QA, I will ask each panelist maybe just to give a short wrap-up, whatever you want to leave behind for this participation, for this audience. Thank you, Ambassador Grit.
Ambassador Pradap have already introduced me, but I just like to add what he has said. I was his deputy director general when he was the director general of the economic department, oversee our cooperation with the regional framework under GMS, BIMSTEC, Mekong Ganga, and also when I was director general of the economic department, Ambassador Chusinthorn was the director oversee the same issues. So it's a privilege that to meet you both here. So I just like to get to the point. In terms of ASEAN-India connectivities, I find Mekong Institute website will make our dream come true. So information network, how we are to involve the private sector on the public-private partnership to maximize benefit from the roads that have been already connected. So physical infrastructure has been ready, but legal infrastructure still need to be overcome. Up to this day, now, if you have the buses or truck going from Thailand to Malaysia or Singapore, you have to reload the cargo and passenger at the border. The road is already there, but the bus and truck cannot move along throughout the region. How could we make our dream come true? That's one thing. And secondly, I think the networking of road, air, sea link is also very important. So I'd like to stress the importance of liberalization of trade in services in transportation sector. I'd like to see the air link from Guwahati in Northeast India to Chiang Mai, to Luang Prabang, to Hanoi, and the rest of ASEAN. Of course, Manipur is a gateway from India to link GMS and the rest of ASEAN. But in the past, we have the ADB helping us to improve the infrastructure development. I was ambassador to Vietnam as well. I spent 3 years trying to convince the Vietnamese that you should allow the Thai truck and buses to enter Vietnam territory. We have Laos as a land link for Thailand to go to the sea. So now we have India on the western side that we should also get the thing done. I just to conclude that we have to act west. Like India said, we are now the time not to look east, but only act east. So everything is there already. Just overcome it. The question it will be there to be answered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe I will answer on behalf of the panelists. I think basically he just summarized for us that the ASEAN-India connectivity is the work in progress. There's a lot of work to be done, especially the software. And talking about connectivity, we could not do it without the support of ADB. So I was wondering, my friend back there, Mr. Arjun, you want to add anything? No, he is not. He's hungry. Okay, thank you. But we could not do it without his ADB support. Anybody would like to ask any questions to our panelists? Please raise your hand. If not, then we will ask each of our panelists to kindly give the audience your last words.
Thank you. Just to be very brief, I think you're beginning with the openness. You know, I understand that opportunities at home do exist, but openness, I think, will bring more opportunities. And you already come here, so at least many of you who've come here have opened your hearts to come. You open your minds to listen, to share the sharings that we have engaged for the last couple of days. I also, I think, heard the Minister of Thai Tourism, Kun Gopkan, speak about open sky. And I hope that is one of the themes that, because the first T that I think I'd like to highlight is the tourism, which I think is a win-win situation for ASEAN and for India. I keep hearing complaints from my investors, institutional investors from the US, Europe, on how difficult it is to get multiple visas into some of our countries, including Thailand. So I'm certainly hopeful that I think this is an area of tourism where more cooperations that would lead to a better more coherent policy where if tourism is a win-win area, whether it's ASEAN visa, sure, you might need to get approval from your country, national security councils in each country has to agree. It may not just be an economics issue or a tourism issue, but I think there is a win-win that both India, the share in this with the ASEAN platform together. I think we touched on a technology issue. I'm glad that we have an honorary Thai citizen, Shanti, who has kindly articulated the Eastern Economic Corridor. As a Thai, I didn't want to be too much promoting the EEC of saying it, but it is an area where the technology angle, I think, will matter for not just Thailand, but the whole of ASEAN, because technology and the prosperity on a digital economy is without border. And there is definitely opportunity that you've seen Gojek in Indonesia is a unicorn, is a billionaire, is using Garuda in Malaysia, setting example. In Thailand, Philippines, we have no unicorn yet. But I think this is a great opportunity where India, I mentioned earlier about startups, about the technology advantage they have, they can bring that know-how. We have a digital science park project, as you're probably aware, from the Ministry of Digital Economy in Sriracha, 700 rai of land that company like Tata Consulting Services, TCS, Tech Mahindra, who's already in Thailand, doing software services, providing, can definitely expand that and bring both the hardware side and the software side to that digital science park in Sriracha. I also would not forget the last T, which is talent, because it is talent and it is people to people, meaning that the cross-border of labor, the more flexibility of movement of labor that would allow the success of a true ASEAN economic community to be prosper. There's a lot of profession that may be protected at the moment, but I'm hopeful that as we do grow together, and I think as the challenges in terms of maximizing the value of this integration, whether it's through ASEP, whether it's through ASEAN ourselves or ASEAN plus one dialogues that we continue to have, I'm hopeful that the mobility of labor would enable ASEAN, now in its 50th year, I think on the 8th of August, would realize its full potential.
Thank you. On visas, actually, most of you probably know that India has proposed the ASEP business travel card. Actually, what I've told my colleagues is we need to lobby the Australians. They own the intellectual property for the APEC business travel card. It's been proposed in other frameworks as well, Indian Ocean Rim Association. Okay, and they make $40 per card. Okay, number two is that always there's a balance between trade, tourism, and security. So if we are able, actually we should be able to overcome it, because this is a pre-approved, longer-term, multiple entry visa. It's not as if these people don't have to apply for the visa. So I would say talk to the Australians, very hard. Now, the other one is, having been privy to some conversations during the past couple of days, ASEP is doable, it's not rocket science. But what, let's say, people from my side have said is that we need to sit down and see what the sensitivities are on the Indian side, see what the sensitivities are on the Thai side, and reassure each other that we will take our sensitivities into consideration and see how we can manage it. And the other one is that we need to gang up on people, the other Eastern Asian countries, in terms of like getting up to coverage of 92% of goods. Okay, they're not up to that yet. So we need to gang up on the rest. The other point is, one of the speakers spoke about Eastern Economic Corridor. Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO of Niti Aayog, went to see CEO of EEC. And it's like two sides of the same coin met, they fell in love with each other. They said the right things, what the other side wanted to hear. And because he understands what we are trying to do. And then he pointed to the PowerPoint, said, this is the future. You have a great project. And then he also talked about the Delhi-Mumbai corridor. And what I learned from there is that this is the new urbanization. Urbanization as we know it is dealing with cities that are here and, dealing with the problems. But new cities, smart cities like in India will be created, and new cities will be created in the EEC as well. And this is the new urbanization. We talk about it in APEC, but never in this way. So APEC is behind ASEAN and India on this. And finally, somebody spoke this morning, in the first session about how do we look after the people, the environment and people that lose out and so on and so forth. I believe there's really value in the SDGs. That's a global consensus, If you just implement the SDGs, you will look after the inclusiveness. And if there's inclusiveness, there is sustainability. And final question for all the think tanks. I was sitting here and thinking, it's all about integration, right? Now, is it harder to integrate the states in India, or is it harder to integrate the 10 member states in ASEAN? Thank you.
I think India does have many FTAs in Southeast Asia. It also has FTA with ASEAN. I think we need to be a little careful. If you go to America and you look at Americas, which has a North and South America, right? They work as one region, and they have NAFTA, which allows the movement of product from USA to the rest of the South America or Argentina or Brazil. You have EU here, which allows the product to move from one country to another country within EU, which gives them no protection and allows the duty-free movement. Here we are in Asia with ASEAN country, and unless we create a proper system and processes by virtue of which we allow the free movement of product, at least within ASEAN country, then we will be able to protect ourselves from the rest of the world. Otherwise, this part of the country, this part of the region would be isolated, and we will not be able to take the advantage of the strength what we have. So I think we should look at this very aggressively, and some of the FTAs should not be for a political reason. They should be purely on a commercial ground, and we should keep the politics out of it for those FTAs. So let's work hard. I think make FTA work in an effective way for free trade and a free movement of goods. Thank you.
Well, the initiative that I have just shared in my presentation, basically we are aiming for inclusive growth of the economic corridors. So we have been talking of businesses mostly for the urban-centric, I would say, for the large-scale businesses, but there are good opportunities to work with the small, medium-sized enterprises, also the small producers, which are located in the economic corridors that I shared with you. With this three economic corridor database and also with the GMS logistic database, we are working on a comprehensive database of the GMS countries that will come out as a gmsbusiness.com very shortly. And by 2022, our aim is to expand to the other ASEAN countries. This is an open forum, and this gives a lot of opportunities for the investors, business partners, seeking organization, and also build up business matching, not only in buying and selling, but also on technology transfer, skill development, etc., etc. And before I conclude, I must acknowledge the support that we receive from Japan, Korea, New Zealand, Switzerland, and also Thailand for building up this kind of services for the region. Thank you very much.
I'll be very practical. I think all these corridors and agreements are in the right directions, but what we need to do is really understand what are the core things, what are the low-hanging fruit that can make things happen. And two things which I see when we are talking about India and Thailand, for instance, is first is customs reforms. I think cross-border, that is really important. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to grow your SMEs. You're not going to be able to grow the economy, because today's world is you are basically importing, exporting a lot of things, and the economic dependency is increasing. So you need to really have this expedited shipments. You need to understand, single window, which we see. We've been talking about it for the last 10 years, and there's minimum impact on that. So that's one. The other one is BIMSTEC. I think we need to somehow find a way to expedite and at least do a pilot project on BIMSTEC, cross-border pilot project. At least let's start with a pilot and see and assess those, and and then you could make, you can make refinements on the way there. But I think if you're just sitting on an agreed papers and continue producing more agreements, I think that is also not healthy. At some point on time, you're going to sit back and question, and okay, we've done so much. What does this brought us? I think what we need to do is start having pilots on some of the things that we have agreed on. If we have not agreed on, identify core things that what needs to be agreed on, agree on it, and get it moving. I think that's my last word. Thank you.
Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. May I invite everybody here to give them another round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. And one last thing before we go, we have a token of appreciation to all our panelists, which Kun Prabda will do us the honor of presenting the gift to all our panelists.
Thank you for your patience and attention. Hope we meet again after our Minister of Commerce when ASEAN Indian connectivity. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you so much ขอบคุณมากครับ Before we go, there's a questionnaire in your bag. For organizer to improve our next and upcoming events, we would like to make a request for you to give us back the questionnaire, your feedback and your input on how we can improve our next up-and-coming forums. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. I'm Vaharin Sachadeo. Sawasdee krap.